Okay, all right. Well, hey, buenos dias, everybody. It's time for another preview video about the weekly readings. That's me, the Profesor, again, checking in. And as you can see, I'm here in the I'm here in the office, way down deep in the caverns and the catacombs here at the French Valley World Headquarters. It's still a bit too warm and muggy, uncomfortable to record outside. So hopefully, if this humidity finally ends pretty soon, I can finally start recording a few of these videos outside. But in the meantime, we'll just go ahead and stay safely inside here. And let me go ahead and tell you a little bit what's happening up for the readings for this week, the third week, in which we start to examine the Age of Exploration and Conquest. And in case you're wondering what jersey I have on, this is actually for the San Jose Sharks. This is actually the only Northern California team that I like. I'm not a big fan of the Northern California football teams, and as for baseball, the A's are okay, but not a big fan. The Giants I absolutely can't stand. Uh, I'm not really big on the Warriors, but the Sharks. I've been a fan of the Sharks ever since they started. I was definitely not too happy when the Kings beat them up last year. The Sharks had that 3-0 lead in the playoffs, but the Kings came back and won four straight and went on to win the Stanley Cup. And I think the Sharks have never recovered from that. A lot of turmoil in the locker room. Uh, Accusations here and there. The one guy says the general manager is this, the coach is a bum, he's blah blah blah, he's this and that. So to make a long story short, the Sharks missed the playoffs this past season, and they're in a bit of I guess you could say a transition period, all because they really messed up. They blew it when they played when they played the Kings. Okay, well enough for hockey and sports talk for now. Let's go ahead and get into the topics for this week. Again, we're looking at the Age of Exploration and Conquest. And as you notice, as you're looking at the module overview, a lot of stuff to cover. So I'm going to go through as much of the stuff in detail. So this is one of the longer videos from the semester, at least 20 minutes. Maybe we might come in closer to about up to about 30 minutes. So even though there's a lot of material, I definitely encourage everybody to just stay with me for this entire video because I want to try to dissect or distill everything that's happening in the module. And if you're looking at the module over here right now, looking at all the stuff, ay, professor, that's a lot of stuff. Estás loco, you're crazy. What's all this? But remember, everybody, we're trying to compress an entire semester in just 7 weeks. So the material that you see, it's literally for 2 weeks of class, not so much 1 week of class, but because we're on a tightened time frame. Um, that's why everything looks really compacted for not just this module, but for the rest of the session. But that's why I'm making these videos to try to give you a sense in understanding the best way to approach the reading. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. And I got my notes here about the module. So let's go ahead and press on. And to do that, I want to go and take off my glasses because I'm actually nearsighted, so I can get a better look at the information here without my extra set of eyes. All right, here we go. Okay, to get things started, everybody, go ahead and take a look at the first of the U.S. lecture outlines. We're going to have a lot of these between now and the end of the session, and of course, all these outlines are located in the latter pages of the module. So in page 4 of the module, just skip over to page 4, and and this is one of the items that you download. The attachments. So when you go to those other pages in the modules, whether it's page 3 or page 4, remember, download all of these things from that is these are located at the top part of the module. Don't try to click the links uh, 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 the or no sorry the text about these outlines or about these articles. Remember, all of these things are located, but at the very top of the module. So the link or the font is in blue, light blue, purple, something like that. So be sure to click that, and you'll download them easily. And the all U.S. lecture outlines are in PDF format. What this U.S. lecture outline number 1 tells you is it gives you a view of some of the topics that we looked at in the earlier parts of the class. in terms of Native American cultures, Native American life waves, a little bit about the what's happening in Mesoamerica with respect to the Aztecs, the Maya, and then it goes on to introduce some of the major European powers and also the factors that compel them to go into exploration and colonization. In other words, what are the things happening in Europe with respect to population growth or population decline, um, changes in the environment, political change of ethnic, religious warfare, all of these things. These are many factors which are compelling Europeans to begin the process of exploration and colonization. In culture or in anthropology, we call these things push and pull factors. Uh, I get into a lot more of this in the 142 class of talking about Mexican immigration to the United States. So, for all intents and purposes, what's happening in Europe is an early version of push and pull factors. That is, what's compelling Europeans to leave Europe and go to the go to the new world, the Americas. All right. After you check out the outline, read the first article uh, by Chris Lane and Matthew Restoll. This article is called An Emerging Atlantic World. Basically, what Lane and Restoll do is introduce us to the worlds of Africa and also the Portuguese. Uh, you had a lot of powerful, you had some major trading networks going on in Africa, some powerful African kingdoms. So Africa, long during the medieval times, had some powerful kingdoms with extensive trade networks, and also there was a slave trade going on in Africa at the time. Slavery in Africa was, for the most part, a temporary type of situation. That is, if one tribe was going in to raid, to take loot, to take supplies, to take food, and then to take slaves, oftentimes those slaves they would be adopted by these rival tribes, or stay with these tribes or for weeks, months, maybe years at a time, and then essentially be freed, and they could go back to their own to their own people. But what the Europeans that started with the Portuguese was the Portuguese, in essence, began the process of turning slavery into, you might say, more of a profitable venture, which of course is what the other Europeans, like the Spanish and especially the English, really picked up on a little bit later. So in terms of a lot of these slave trading networks, the Africans first, and then the Portuguese, they were the ones who, in essence, perfected the system, and that's what Lane and Restoll talk about. Now, while the Portuguese were, you might say, the first to get the ball rolling in terms of opening up the Atlantic with respect to trade, it was the Spaniards, of course, who really took things to a new level with respect to aspects like religion and politics, ideology. So take a look at the PowerPoint program about Spain. The PowerPoint program looks at the path of various cultures that ruled over Spain since the time of Christ, and actually even before the time of Christ. So we're talking about the Romans, the Visigoths, and then coming into about the 7th and 8th century AD, we're talking about the Muslims and also the Christian war. This time of the famous leader El Cid. If you've been to Balboa Park, you've probably seen his famous statue right there located outside the Prado restaurant. So El Cid, in essence, symbolizes the warrior tradition, the warrior ethic that epitomized what Christians were essentially all about for the better part of 7 centuries. This is a time period known as La Reconquista, the Reconquest. For 7 centuries, Muslims and Christians fought each other for territory, for loot, for slaves, for animals, with essentially the Jews being caught in the middle of all of this. So this back and forth for nearly 7 centuries, and really intensified after about the 11th century AD, really gave Spanish Christianity a militaristic ethic, and this ethic is, of course, what a lot of the conquistadores, especially Cortés, Pizarro, and many others brought when they came to a place like Mexico and Peru in the 16th century. So after you look at the Spain program, check out the article or check out the Yeah, check out the article called the Reconquista Overview. Some of the most significant Christian kings like Alfonso VIII and Ferdinand III are mentioned in this. And basically, this overview, this article gives you more of an in-depth sense in terms of what's happening within a certain time frame of the Reconquista. We're seeing the origins of Christian kingdoms like Aragon and Castilla or Castile, and then with Granada, which is toward the south of Spain, who are present day, well, of course, Granada, but also down toward Cordoba and Sevilla. These areas became uh, these areas, in essence, were were part of the last remaining Muslim kingdom by the time we get to the time of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, and of course Christopher Columbus. Now, at the end of the Reconquista, this is what I mentioned in the PowerPoint program. The Reconquista had stalled due to a variety of factors. The infamous Black Death, the bubonic plague, which wiped out, I think it's something like a quarter to about a third of Europe's population at the tail end of the 14th century. Really slowed down political momentum, military momentum that it really built up during the middle part of the Reconquista, again from roughly about the 11th century through to about the 13th century AD. But that began to change coming around 1469. That's when the two kingdoms of Castilla and Aragon finally united, and of course this is because of the marriage of the two dominant monarchs, Queen Isabella of Castilla and King Ferdinand of Aragon. So um, so at this point in time, what you should do next is look at the Reconquista notes. This is an old transparency I used for this class and also for my master college classes many years ago. So it's definitely something you might say quite primitive in terms of the writing. I think you could probably still make out some of the smudge marks that I have. Uh, but the information is still valid. So check out that old transparency called Reconquista Notes, and then check out the When Worlds Collide article by Ken Auchincloss. In this article, When Worlds Collide, you'll see how 1492 was a watershed year on many levels. It wasn't just because that Columbus, the old story, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, blah blah blah. There was a lot more that was happening in 1492, and that article by Auchincloss, and also as I mentioned too, the Reconquista notes goes into a little bit more detail about this. So basically, what you find is that Columbus was really you might say a simple man, but at the same time a modern man. He was a man of his time. It's really easy for us to say, "Oh, Columbus, he was a goon, he was a cabron, he was this, he was that." No, the truth is much more complex than that. Columbus was not a hero, but he was not a villain. He just happened to be caught in some very amazing circumstances, and he did the best that could to the best of his abilities. When he as a political leadership and trying to govern colonies, he was a disaster. He didn't know what the hell he was doing, and people took advantage of that. But as a mariner, as a man who understood the tides, uh, understood the maritime traditions that the Portuguese had known for many years, he was a man who understood all of that. So we have to recognize him as a great mariner, a great sailor, as someone who, in essence, was just the bearer of Reconquista traditions from Europe to the Americas. If it hadn't been for Columbus, somebody else would have undoubtedly taken the place. It just happened that, in many respects, he was the at the right place at the right time. Okay, you may want to check a little bit more about Columbus in one of the digital history optional readings. There is a section there in which you can check out some optional readings, but again, this is optional. You don't have to check this out. Actually, the link might be broken, so if any of you do try to check out the digital history stuff, if the link is broken, please let me know and I'll fix it. I'll fix it during the week. All right, let's switch gears and now move over to the Portuguese and the English. Um, I mentioned the Portuguese briefly, and that Columbus was already cognizant of the traditions that the Portuguese had established, actually starting about a century earlier. So that's where the Portugal PowerPoint program comes into the scene. So please check that out, and we'll see how in the late 14th century, key political leaders and sailors, people like King João II, and also the famous Prince Henry the Navigator, and of course Bartolomeu Dias, and also include others like Vasco da Gama Pedro Alvarez Cabral, and many others. The Portuguese were the ones who really established themselves as the first dominant European imperial power because uh, these guys were seasoned mariners. Trade was what they wanted. The Portuguese, they were largely, shall we say, uh, they didn't really have a lot of the, you might say, Reconquista mindset that the Spanish had because Portugal, of course, was more oriented toward the sea. If you look at the coast at the map of Portugal, you'll see that basically its main neighbor is the Atlantic Ocean, and of course south toward the where the mouth of the Mediterranean. So the Portuguese didn't have to really contend with a lot of the fighting that was going on in places like Castilla, Leon, Aragon, Valencia, all those places in Spain. Portugal was largely absent of that. So because of that, Portugal didn't have this militaristic tradition. It was more geared toward trade, toward the sea, toward establishing trading posts, early forms of colonies, that type of thing. So that of course is the essence of the PowerPoint program and all those guys that I mentioned, a few others that I didn't mention, you'll see all of that in the PowerPoint program. Now, while the Portuguese first and then the Spanish began to come on the scene as the first European imperial powers, England, on the other hand, a bit of a different story. England was essentially a backwater for all intents and purposes, but what be, but that began to change with the Protestant Reformation era and the era of King Henry VIII. So Henry VIII was so Henry VIII came on the scene in the middle part of the 16th century. So this is way after the time of Columbus and way after the time of the Portuguese. So if you're looking at the time frame in terms of where all these guys fit on the chronological scale, the Portuguese were first, the Spanish were second, Columbus, Cortes, Pizarro, all those guys, they were doing their thing long before Henry VIII came on the scene. And Henry VIII, you might say, he took advantage of the political changes and religious changes with the Protestant Reformation period. So basically, to make a long story short, King Henry used the Reformation as a pretext to justify his ambitions, his ideas, his desire to rebuild the English state. So, in other words, he used religion as as a way to justify his actions, which included divorcing his wife, Catherine of Aragon. And of course, Aragon being a Spanish kingdom, not surprisingly, when Henry does this, for all intents and purposes, he tends to mess up relations between Spain and England. I'll let my colleagues in the history department who do European history give you more of the story about the clash between the English and the Spanish with respect to the royal stuff. But to make a long story short, by the time Henry VIII dies and then his daughter Queen Elizabeth comes on the scene, in the tail end of the 1550s, that's when England starts to emerge as a dominant power in the imperial game with respect to colonization, exploration, and all of that stuff. So all that stuff is spelled out in the England PowerPoint program. Okay, let me see what else I should mention here about the England program. Okay, okay, yeah. So after you finish, so again, that program gives you a really good sense as to what's happening in England as we get toward the end of the end of the 16th century. This takes us into the 1570s and 1580s, and of course, by the end of the 16th century, that's when England and Spain that's when England and Spain go to war. That's what I try to say. Okay. Let me go ahead now and start wrapping up this overview of over this preview of the readings, and let's go ahead and press on a little bit more with the remaining readings of the module. Um, Now, while England was building itself up as a dominant state, as a powerful state in its own right by the end of the 16th century, to go back to Spain, Spain was clearly the undisputed master when it came to the idea of colonization and conquest. And um, Lane and Restall talk about this in the next reading. So this is the Riddle of Conquest article, and the themes in this article talk about the factors, the ideas, the culture of Spain, the politics of Spain, which went behind the notion of colonization, conquest, administration, all of that fun stuff. So after you read the Lane and Restall article, Riddle of Conquest, Then let's go ahead and check out the movie for the week. Your movie this week is called okay, oops. Oh, sorry about the my I think my screen scared the same, so I lost you guys for a second. So now I think we're back. Um, the film this week is from the Conquistador series that Michael Wood, the British historian, made back around 2000 2001, and this is the film about Hernan Cortes. So basically, what Cortes does is a lot of the ideology, the themes of power, warfare, conquest, which had been ingrained in the Spanish mindset for the better part of 7 centuries. Cortes especially picks up the ball and runs with it from there. So basically, what Cortes does is he transmits Reconquista ideas from Europe to the Americas, to of course the Aztec Empire. So check out the film, and remember, everybody, to see the film, you need to go to the Films on Demand database from the Southwestern Library website. So just follow the instructions I have that's listed in the general forum, in the discussion board, and punch in your Southwestern ID information, your password, and you're good to go to check out the film. All right. So after you watch the Cortez film, and then check out the okay. Actually, I kind of lost my place here, but let me just backtrack here a bit. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Again, my point is that when you see the Cortez film, you get an idea of a lot of the ideas, the ideology, the thought process of the Reconquista mindset, which people like Cortez and many of his compadres, his compañeros, his fellow conquistadors had. This is happening, of course, in the early parts of the 16th century, which excuse me, this happened, of course, in the early parts of the 16th century, the early 1500s. But one thing about the conquistadors or conquistadores is, is that a lot of these men, shall we say, really start to think that they know what's best, and that's really not a big surprise because these men are so far away from the seat of Spanish power, and this happened at a time when King Charles V, is on the scene. It's easy for the king back in Spain to say, okay, you conquistadores, you behave yourselves. You take this land, and this land is now part of the Spanish dominion. But a lot of these guys, shall we say, uh, they were pretty ruthless, and they were not keen to follow orders. One of the things that was really an important element of the Spanish conquistador mindset was this idea of obedezco pero no cumplo, or if you say it in the Castilian, obedezco pero no cumplo. Basically, the idea is that I recognize the king's authority, but I will not enforce it. I will not listen to it. This became a major problem for the Spanish crown for the next few centuries because as more and more conquistadores and settlers came into the New World, whether it was Mexico, Central America, uh, South America, the Caribbean, Cuba, Puerto Rico, you name it. A lot of these men, of course, even though they said that they obeyed the power of the king, whether it was Carlos Quinto or Felipe II and Philip II, they pretty much ran their own show, and not surprisingly, that would cause problems for the Spanish Empire for the next few centuries, which we'll get to in some of these future modules and preview videos. Okay. All right. You guys still with me? Okay. We're almost done with the module readings. Now, let's finish off the module with the start of the Between the Conquest reading. So, again, that's this book right here. So, I know I've mentioned in previous videos that it's very important that you get the 5th edition, that is the blue copy. Mike Ornelas, my colleague at Mesa College, made a lot of changes between the 4th and 5th edition. So, if you got the yellow 4th edition, you're going to have to struggle a little bit with some of the readings and also some of the quiz questions. So please make sure you have the 5th edition. If you don't have it now, make sure you get it this week because this is the first week that we're using Between the Conquest. In Between the Conquest, it's pages 3 through 36. So that includes Mike's introduction, which recaps a lot of the stuff that we looked at in the previous 2 weeks, and also includes the readings from John Chavez, in which Chavez talks about how the Spaniards, after they had established themselves in Mexico City, present-day Tenochtitlan, we used to be, of course, Tenochtitlan, and established the early colony that is what became known as the colony of New Spain. Chavez talks about how the Spanish began to make their way toward the north. They began to explore new lands, new territories. They come across into places like New Mexico, eventually California, Arizona, of course, Texas. So Chavez, you might say, picks up the story that is after the Spaniards make their arrival into the New World, they began to venture out into what we now know, excuse me, as the American Southwest. All right. So to wrap things up, I think what you should do at this point in time, after you read the Between the Conquest stuff, is go ahead and review the U.S. lecture outline number one more time. That's where we started off with the module reading. So go ahead and look at the module one more time, so that now you can better see, kind of fill in the gaps in terms of what the outline talks about. Because I think the outline gives you a pretty good broad picture in terms of the overall scheme of things happening in the Americas when the Europeans start making their way into the region. The outline gives you an overview about all of that, all the readings and the PowerPoint and the film. You might say fill in the gaps and fill in the spaces, um, and then when you look at the outline again, then I think all those themes and topics make more sense, because I think it's I compare it to this, and this is the last thing that'll say, that'll leave you with for this for this preview video. If you look at a painting for the first time, you don't know what to look for. Classic example: if you go to Detroit and you see Diego Rivera's epic mural about Detroit industry, you look at it, you're overwhelmed, and you think, caramba, what is Rivera saying? Look at all this stuff happening here. He's got nude female figures here. He's got people making planes over here. He's got Henry Ford over here, and there's Henry Ford's son Edsel Ford over on this panel. He's got people going to work here, and he put his friends on the assembly line making cars. What's going on here? But if you get an idea of what Rivera was trying to do with respect to Detroit industry in terms of what's happening in the U.S. in the 1930s, and what Henry Ford is doing with the assembly line, and the construction of the Ford V8 car, because keep in mind, of course, Ford had been the master of the assembly line for about 20 years before Rivera came to Detroit with Frida Kahlo. And then you understand what's happening in terms of popular culture of the United States. Movies were popular. Charles Lindbergh was an American hero, that type of thing. So when you understand all of the backstory of what's happening in not just Detroit, but in the United States, and what Rivera's politics are and his ideas are, then you can go back to the museum and look at the mural again. Oh, okay, I see what Rivera is saying here. Okay, he's telling a story. He's starting from, you might say, the conception of time, the first signs of industry and agriculture, all the way to the end on this wall when the car, the Ford V8 car is finally constructed and it's rolling off the assembly line. I think that was the essence of what I try to do in this module, in this that is in this preview video, by telling you to look at the outline first, go through all the readings and videos and PowerPoints next, and then go back and look at the outline. So I think so hopefully that strategy worked. But again, everybody, um, because the readings are so all over the map, and that'll be the case for the rest of the session. I think by not only reading the overview essays at the start of each module and watching these videos, uh, I'm trying to give you a sense of the best way to approach the reading, and to give you a picture. And I think these videos, in essence, give you a picture of what's going on here. So if you want to do the strategy, that is, watch the video first, listen to what I say, go through everything first, and then watch the video a second time, then maybe that might be helpful as you press forward for the rest of the session. Okay. Well, I mentioned this video will be pretty long, and we're clocking in at just under 30 minutes. So I'm looking at the time right now, and we're at about 29 minutes and 10 seconds. So with it, everybody, that takes care of that. So good luck with the readings this week. I'll have plenty more videos for you for the rest of the session, and if the weather cools off, then definitely I'll record some of these outside. So that's it, everybody. Take care. Have a good week, and I'll talk to you guys again next week.